Hi everybody, welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. I'm Maria, and I am here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. So, as a professional organizer, I always start these off with a tip, and so today's tip is going to be group tasking, or task grouping, whichever way you want to think about it. The idea is that you take similar tasks and you put them together so you can be more efficient in completing them. So instead of running an errand 3 or 4 times in the course of a week, you plan out your shopping so that you can go ahead and do all of them spot to spot to spot to spot. Make sure you get all of the things you're looking for, and therefore save trips, which is great with saving on gas these days, but it will also be much more time efficient. It'll include things like making phone calls. So maybe you'll have a list of phone calls to make, including doctor's appointments, getting an oil change, whatever else you need to make a phone call about. So you can either squeeze those in amongst other tasks that you're doing, maybe if you're waiting at a school to pick a kid up, or you're waiting for a friend to come out to the car and you show up a few minutes early because you're going to go to lunch or something. That might give you the opportunity to make a quick call. So having those with you so that they're already ready to go, what you're calling about, so set oil change and a phone number, if they're all grouped together, you can either knock them all out at once or be prepared to do them when they fit in. But errand running, online shopping, if there's several items that you need, instead of going online several times, go once, which will also help cut down on the desire to buy more stuff. The more times you're on, the more likely you are to pick up unneeded, unwanted items. So my grouped tasks for this week, well, the last 2 weeks, was to do a bunch of small things and get them knocked out. And so actually, if you notice, I got all the rest of my hexes done in the last 2 weeks. I didn't think I was going to. I thought I was going to get about half of them done, but I was able to complete them all. And not only that, the entire first 2 rows have been done in their triples. Now, the first top row is just little tiny wedges to square off the top. So it doesn't look as impressive as it could have, but I've gotten that whole set done. So the next thing will be to take the next set down, form it into its trios, and go ahead and start sewing those. And so I'm expecting to do that with you later today, at least get it started. And then I'll probably pull down the entire wall into its triplets. And then what I'll do is, as I get them completed, they'll go back on the wall. So you watched this grow from the bottom up as I was filling it in, and now you're going to watch it as it gets sewn from the top down for the triples. So it should be interesting to watch. So that's just going to be something where you can kind of keep track of what I'm doing and keep me kind of on the level. So another thing that I promised to have ready for you today was when I went on the Nebraska trip and I showed those pictures last time, not all of the pictures were right. They for some reason, they skewed out of the PowerPoint frame. So I've resized them, so I'm hoping you can see them. There's only like 4 or 5 of them to look at today. So let's go ahead and pull those up. All right. Now I have to actually go to the PowerPoint screen so that I can advance the photos. Okay. So I showed you the lamp when we were talking about this last time, because I just love that lamp, the fact that it glows, and then of course there's the light coming down on it. And then of course there's the flamingos that are coming out of the wall and from behind the chair. But this is the chair I was talking about that you couldn't see. This is such a cool shape. And I was thinking that that might make an interesting either quilting design if you followed the humps down and then the scoop. Or it could be pieced into something kind of interesting. But that negative space shape I thought was really kind of cool. This is the lamp I was telling you about that was made out of just plumbing parts. One of the things that I've talked about here before is having on your quilting eyes when you're out places. And I get a lot of my quilting supplies in parts of stores where they're not for quilting. I get a bunch of stuff at the hardware store. I don't do lighting like this, but I did think this was very cool and was very much that out of the box thinking that we're trying to achieve when we're quilting. And then this was the table I was trying to tell you about. This is in a bar, and there's bar stools you can see on the right and the left, but the table itself has a crank, so you can raise or lower the table so that it's the perfect height for you and your friends. So I thought that was kind of cool, and it was a way of thinking about things in terms of how can it be practical. Because sometimes we'll decide we want to make something just because we want to make it, and that's fine. But a lot of times we'll feel guilty about that if it doesn't have a practical use. So there's all kinds of practical out there. So I just wanted to make sure you could see that photo. So that was number 2 on what I promised you. And then what was number 3? Now I'm blanking on number 3. I apologize for that. So anyway, so let me tell you what I've been accomplishing this week, or the last 2 weeks. Like I said, I've been putting up and I thread basted all of those hexes, pretty much all the plain blue ones from here up, and all of the sand ones at the top had to be cut out, shaped, and thread basted. So all of that got done. Another thing, my group for this last 2 weeks, like I said, was the short, small projects. So one of them was yesterday. I posted it, and I don't know if it was visible or not. I'm having the worst time trying to get stuff to go up onto YouTube. Was my son's mask, because I did a repair. And so that's not something a lot of us do anymore. And so that was something I definitely wanted to make sure was included. What I'm working on right now, which you probably heard while you were waiting for this to start, is because of a client of mine. She likes to use shower caps, and she was complaining that the elastic is always breaking on them. And so she wanted me to put on a new piece of elastic. Well, I had one that was also in disrepair here. So I said, okay, let me pull one apart and see, what's involved in this. Because I had been thinking maybe I would put in a channel and maybe a drawstring instead of elastic, just sewn to the thing, because those are so flimsy, there's really nothing there. So I said, well, what am I going to do? So I took it apart, and I was actually surprised that it isn't even round. I had assumed it was a round piece of material, but it's not. It's basically a rectangle that they rounded the corners off on. Then they just gathered it up and did that by putting on the elastic. What you basically do is you stretch the elastic while you sew, and then it releases back, and so it creates its own gathers. That's the idea. Oh, excuse me, there's something in my eye. And I said, okay, I could do a channel idea, but this thing isn't going to last very long. So I went to Joann's today, and I wanted to use oilcloth, and I wanted to make a permanent shower cap. I didn't like any of the oilcloths they had there. So I picked up some thin vinyl, and I was going to put cotton on one side and vinyl, on the other. Except then I thought about how I do my hair. My hair is always dry. And because of the environments that I'm in for work, I have to wash it almost every day. So it just dries it out even more. So what I do is I shampoo, and then I rinse, and then I put in conditioner, and then I put on a shower cap. So actually the inside of my shower cap is goopy, and the outside is just wet from the shower while I'm washing the rest of me. And then when I'm done, then I take off the shower cap and I rinse out the conditioner. So it works kind of like a little mini sauna, because it's all nice and hot in there, and it helps the moisture go into the hair. And I've been doing this for at least 30 years. Okay? And I go through my fair share of shower caps. So I was going to use this vinyl and do a trial to see if I could get it to work. But then I realized if it does work, I'll be wasting it because I won't be able to use that shower cap, because that would put the cloth on the outside, which kind of defeats the whole purpose, right? So I'm making this one out of 2 layers of vinyl. This is super thick. I don't think it's going to work long term, but it was at least worth trying. And as a sample, to see, you know, it's kind of like a mock-up when you're making clothing. And this was $10 a yard versus the oilcloth, I think, was $30 a yard. It's on the bolt, so it's an extra long width, but even so, I was like, okay, for a trial, I'll try this. If the concept works, then I'll make it out of something else later. So I took the vinyl and I found the center on the two pieces, because I folded it in half and then I found the center. And then I measured out, and then I cut a big circle at 24 inches. And then from that center point, I just used a ruler, not a ruler, a metal yardstick that I have. And I put the center on the 11, and then I marked at the 0 and the 22, and then a ½ inch in on each side. So this camera has been giving me trouble, so I'm hoping you're going to be able to see what I'm doing, and that it'll make sense, but it may freeze up on me, and if it does, then I'm just going to go ahead and stop. Okay? But I'll get you back to the main camera. So, alright, so that's not a very good picture, but at least it's moving. Okay. It wasn't even doing that before. Okay. So, I have two dotted lines. They're hard to see, but there's one back here, and then there's one where you can see my stitch line is. Okay? I also put in 2 buttonholes on one of the 2 sections. I'm sewing on the inside one first. And then when I get done, I'm going to insert the elastic that I bought so it comes in and out of this hole with lots and lots of extra. And then I'm going to sew the exterior channel. And the idea is that when I get that sewn, the elastic will be fully encased, but you'll be able to just tie it into a bow. So when it's time to go ahead and replace the elastic, all we'll need to do is take a new 1/4 inch piece of elastic, do a couple of quick little stitches onto the old one, pull it through, and tie a new bow. So that's the idea, is that this thing should last practically forever. And in that particular case, it's always the elastic that goes first. It'll also take longer for the elastic to go because it's encased, versus on a regular shower curtain, it's just constantly exposed to water, so it's going to rot, it's going to get bacteria, it's going to have all kinds of other stuff. And so this will be completely wiped down, keep it clean with no problems. Then the idea is to take the edge and just fold in both edges, and then do a quick little seam around the outside edge to finish. If you noticed, I am using binder clips instead of pins, because I don't want to create any holes that I don't have to in the vinyl. I am going to create some with my stitching line. I also bought some Scotchgard. So I'm also going to spray that, but that's going to be down here. So it's going to be a little less important that it be waterproof. But I do want to try that to see how it goes. This is probably going to be too thick. It's probably not going to gather properly. It may require a string versus the elastic, but it's at least worth trying. So that's what I'm going to be working on while we're chatting today. Now, I do want to tell you that when I was hanging up all these hexagons, I used this little pin cushion. When our guild was having we do a camp every February. It's 3 days. It's all day. Our guild normally meets at a fire hall. And so we meet at the same fire hall, and there's members that do little mini classes, etc. People bring projects. It's like a retreat, except that while you do have to take your machine home every day, you're not paying bed and board and all of that stuff. So it's much more financially acceptable for people that are on a tight budget. And who isn't these days, right? So this little thing, it's actually made out of a soda cap. And so they gathered polyester batting, and they stuffed this, and then they glued this down in, put a ribbon on it, put a little piece of elastic on here. But this was so handy when I was working up over my head that I could raise my hands and then just pull out the pins and stick them in as I went. So this was really cool. It's super cheap. It's a great little gift if you wanted to make them for friends. And of course you can make whatever colors or patterns or whatever they like. Or if you do some sort of a boutique kind of a thing, as a fundraiser, you know, where everybody creates stuff to sell, either a boutique or an auction or something like that, then that would be a quick and easy project to work on. I told you I was going to reach out to Bernadette Banner. I have not been able to speak with her. I wound up having to leave a message for her publisher because that's the address that's on her whoops. Boy, I got a little bit heavy-footed there. That's on her website. So I don't have answers to my questions yet, but I was thinking that might wait until next time. So I'm going to give it another 2 weeks to see if she responds. And if she doesn't, then we'll just go ahead and we'll talk about fast fashion and stuff just amongst ourselves. So I am using binder clips like I mentioned earlier. Let me see if I can get camera one if it's still working. It is, hooray. I use them all the time. It's kind of funny because I see people always using pins, and I use the binder clips whenever possible. By the way, I am going to take them off once I have the center ring done. All I'm doing is I put these little teeny tiny marks here all the way around, and I'm just sewing pretty much. I'm trying to curve it a little bit instead of just drawing straight lines, but even if I did straight lines, you'd never know. So I'm just creating this circular channel. I'm not being super concerned about it being perfect. Just because having seen what the original was like, I'm like, okay, I can definitely do that. I can do better than that. This is much more round than theirs was. Now, one problem with sewing these 2 layers of vinyl, this is tablecloth vinyl. It was the thinnest version that they had. So it was the closest to the oilcloth. I mean, the oilcloth they had, my 2 choices at Joann's were either bumblebees, which were not particularly cute bumblebees, or tie-dye. And well, I don't have anything against tie-dye. I don't have anything particularly for it either. So, I just decided that neither of those was going to work, which is why I'm using this white stuff. Also, since my threads are white, it hides a multitude of sins. So, but like I said, the biggest problem with it is it's not flannel backed, but it does have a soft and fuzzy backing on it back in here. Oh, nope, see, my camera froze. I thought that might happen. I think the camera's just dying, and so it's like just working intermittently until its final goodbye. Which kind of annoys me because that's 2 out of the 3 cameras that I bought when I started this, and I haven't been doing this long. And we brought brand new, top-of-the-line webcams. Now, of course, they're not top-of-the-line cameras, but the top-of-the-line webcams that were out there. And so for 2 out of 3 to just poop out on me like this, it just annoys me. Anyway, back to binder clips. So I use these suckers all the time. I'm going to put my triads together with these binder clips. You're going to see it a little bit later. And we'll see kind of how it goes from there. But this way I'm not getting poked with pins all the time. I can take this places and not worry about somebody else getting jabbed, or if I reach into a bag and getting stabbed, because that's what would happen to me. I am just a natural born klutz, And if there's a way to impale myself, I'm going to. So rather than doing that, I thought it might be a good idea to just say no. So, okay, so here's my shower cap. It looks huge, doesn't it? It's actually 1 inch. That's not. It's about a half an inch bigger than the original. Now, of course, with it being this vinyl, it needed to be slightly larger. But my hair, while not super long, does occasionally get long, and so it tends to start pulling out of a regular shower cap. So I want a little bit of extra oomph in this. But it certainly would have been, easy enough to do without. Okay, so the elastic that I bought today is the 1/4 inch braided. The one that's basically just a string I thought was going to be too weak to do this. So, of course, since the camera I would need to show this is out, I'm going to have to hold it up to show you, but let me get the first end in here. Okay. So I'm going to feed one end through. Hopefully you can see this here. Hold on. Let me turn off this one light. It might make it easier to see. Okay. Well, it's white on white, so it's still going to be hard. There it is. Okay, so I fed this piece of elastic out, and it's fairly long. And I'm just going to binder clip it to the top top layer. So there's the back layer here, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, going in the same direction, it's going through here and then it's going this way, I'm going to continue that same direction, but I'm going to lay it right at the seam line around the curve. Okay, so you can see the line here where I stitched. Well, actually you can see it better here. So I'll be stitching on this side of the elastic, and that's how I'm going to encase it. And so by just feeding it in like this, I'll be able to make sure it's right up against the seam. And I gave myself a half an inch, not just a 1/4. If I was doing it with the oilcloth, I'd probably go with 3/8 instead of the half, because it's more slippery on the inside. Because of this backing, I think this is going to be hard enough to gather as it is. So I'm going to start, my hole is here that I'm coming out from. I'm going to start about where this hand is, and I'm just going to work my way all the way around until I get back to here. Okay, and then I will cut the other end, feed it through, and then I'll it'll all be nice and tight then, and I'll be able to finish the seam all the way across to this edge. Now I did just make a mistake. See? So I'm going to unthread this, because I don't want these threads crossing in the middle, and that would be a mistake. So I'm just going to stick it in the hole that's closer in the direction that I'm going, because there's 2 holes. There's 2 of those. So let me just pop this through. Geez, I wish this camera was working. I'm sorry. Okay, so hole number 1, hole number 2. Okay, and so this is in the hole number 2, and I'm going to run it around this way. I'm still going to clip it the same place. I just fed it through the other hole first. Okay, so while we're chatting today, I'm going to go ahead and sew this. Now, which side has my marks? I told you you're going to see all my errors, right? The other side has the marks. So let me pull this back out. All right. So looking at my holes, I'm putting it in the one closest to me with the marked edge up. I never promised you were going to get perfection on this channel. If this is your first time, this is kind of what to expect. You're going to see every mistake that I make while I'm trying to learn new things or try new things. And then you can laugh at me if you want to. You can leave comments down below. Okay, so hole number 1, hole number 2. I'm going in hole number 2 here. And now I'm going to go this way around, because this is the side that the marks are on. So I'm just going to, as I sew, I'm just going to tuck the elastic in so that it's going to be fully encased. Alrighty. Now, if you're using the marks on your sewing machine plate, that's a little bit different. But I'm just going to, again, use the marks that I put at the 1/2 inch mark. And this is 1/4 inch elastic, so I won't have any problems with it. Alright. So I'm just, again, going to sew dot to dot, basically. I'm going to try to make it be on a curve just for niceness sake, to make the gathering a little bit easier, but it's not super duper important. And I just put these dots on with pencil, so the very first shower they're going to get washed out. Good, Judy. I'm glad you saw the repair. I was afraid it wasn't going to actually go up. It was like a 5-minute video that took about 45 minutes to get uploaded because I was having all kinds of trouble. So it was basically just mask repair. Very, very simple. I've pretty much given up for right now on getting the live streams edited. My original plan had been to edit each one in between the filmings, and then take them down off the live stream list, because you'd have the information in a way that would make more sense in little snippets, because a lot of the live stream is what you see here. It's just me yammering and talking about stuff. But because of my job that pays the bills, I can't do this full time yet. I can't even retire from my other job yet. So, I'm just not having the time. It takes about 7 hours to go through and edit the 1 hour live stream, and only that little if I'm not super fussy. So you can imagine how that could just start sucking up time big time. My hope is that once I retire from my organizing company, I'll have more time to do the editing, and then things will be much easier for you to find, because right now, if you saw something you really liked, you would need to go back through and watch them all. And I'll have all of the tips out as a separate playlist, and I often give a lot of tips later on in the thing too. So, those I would pull out too. So that's the idea. But life does not allow for that right now. And until I can set aside that kind of time, I'm afraid you're stuck with these. But if you do enjoy this, please like, subscribe, hit the bell. That way when I do put up a video like I did last night, or these things, you'll just get a notification. And then you can come and watch the silliness as it happens. But anyway, so that's what's going on with that. What else is there? I'm trying not to sew my fingers to the thing. I don't think testing its waterproofing with blood is a good choice. Oh, I see. I'm also feeling through the top for where that elastic is, and I almost sewed it into the seam. But if I'm going to gather it, it has to be free floating. Yep, those are the things I had set aside to talk about for tonight. Anyway, by the way, if you're interested in making one of these, The elastic, this is a 3-foot piece of elastic, and since my diameter is 22 inches, the math will tell you that 3 feet is just about right. Now, when it comes time to gather it, I won't need as much, so I'll be cutting a chunk of it off. And of course, when I'm replacing it, I won't need as much, because I'll also know then how much I do need. So you can either write it down by just subtracting the amount that you cut off, or once you've tied your bow, then you can go ahead and cut off your excess. And I have a huge giant skein of elastic that I got, a spool, not a skein, a spool of elastic that I got at the beginning of COVID, because my first masks, the first 3,600 masks I made with ties. And then people were saying that they preferred the ear loop. So I started making them with ear loops. And so I bought this. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it's all that Joann's had left at the time. So I have this big spool, but it's like 3/4, not 3/4. It's closer to a 1/2 inch. And I didn't want this to be gathered at the 1/2 inch. I thought that would be too much. So that's why I bought the 3 feet for today. Okay, I am coming around. Let me see, is this working again? No. Okay, so I'm coming back to my starting place. And so imagine that it's here, okay, the length I need. I'm actually going to leave myself a good amount sticking out. Now, that's what I left on the first side, was about 4 inches. Since I'm going to be gathering this, I'm going to wind up with extra. So if you want to leave the tail hanging out, because it's only about, 2 feet, not even 2 feet. That can't be 3 feet then. Hold on. 1/2 inch. 3 yards, excuse me. Yes, it's 3 yards. There's about 2.5 feet that's going to be sticking out of this when I'm done. But there'll be a lot less sticking out. I mean, there'll be more that I'm cutting off than that. All right, so now that I'm coming back towards that edge, I'm going to go ahead and feed this through slot number 1. And it's kind of tight, so I'm going to just use a pin and use that to poke it through enough that I can grab it with a nail. Okay. And now I'm going to lay it down. And I did remember what my third thing was, so we'll be talking about that in just a little bit. Okay, so now what I've done is I've snugged this down so that it's just laying right up against my curve. And what I will do is I will binder clip. Basically, I have my 2 ends like this. I'm going to binder clip these together like so, right at the level of the vinyl, just to make sure that they're not going to be in my way as I go around, because I'm going to be going past both of them back to where I originally started, and I don't want to catch the elastic. Okay? Alright, and I'm going to do my best to get a working camera for the sewing machine angle before we come back. My son is investigating that right now, because I don't want to buy more of the same if I'm still going to have a 66% fail rate. But I also don't need super duper expensive right now either, because after all, super duper expensive is going to cut down, it's going to extend the amount of time I have before I can retire, because I'll be spending money on equipment. So, you know, it's kind of a catch-22. Alright, so I've gone back and lapped over. So here's all my tails, right? And then here's my short piece of elastic and my long piece of elastic. Alright, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the gathering process. So because this is the short end, I'm going to actually binder clip it back down to the 2 layers of vinyl like this, and then I'm going to start gathering from the long side. And it's just a simple pull as I stretch this elastic. Now, part of the problem is that this is vinyl, so it does not want to gather the way an oilcloth would or a cotton would. So I'm going to pull and then drag and pull and then drag and pull and then drag until I get it to where it needs to go. So sadly, this is going to take a bit. And I'm not even sure if it'll go down tight enough, because this is really thick. But the proof of concept is here. I think that with a thinner oilcloth, this would have worked beautifully. I could have also gathered this the first time on string, like a twine instead of using the elastic. Just to kind of get it in position first and then draw the elastic through. But, you know, that's what tests are all about. Make it work. But the nice thing is, if this does work, and I don't have to make another one, then I will never have to make another one for myself. I have a feeling that my client's going to have me make like 40 of them, because that's just how she can be. Because once she finds something she likes, she wants it in every color. That's one of those strange things about being an organizer and a quilter. Sometimes it's very hard to take people's fabric stash to charity. Because I'm like, I know exactly what I would use that for. And it's also hard not to talk people into keeping some of their fabrics, because I can think of all the different things they could do with it. But that's not the job then. So, but it can be a bit of a challenge. I'm sure you can understand. It's kind of like if you go over to a friend's house and like, oh, I'm thinking about getting rid of this. A lot of us are like, oh, well, if you don't want it, I could use it. So, I'm not ready to do it yet. But the third thing I had for today was the backing for the Twisted 4-Patch quilt. So I have my measurements, but I'm not going to do your standard back. By the way, see here, so far I am so far. I'm not going to do your regular 4-patch. I mean, your regular solid backing. I'm not going to just piece something simple. I am going to, following the tradition of the original quilt, as well as this one, is I'm going to use it to kill some of my stash. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. But I want to finish this part first. I'm probably not going to stitch down the outer edge. I haven't decided. I don't want to bother with binding, because of course a binding is going to have the same problem just having a cotton shower cap would have, in that it's going to get wet and it doesn't do any good. And I was planning on facing it, but do I want to fold it over and then whip stitch the edge? Do I want to put in a decorative stitch, something like that? Am I going to machine do it? Do I want to hand do it? I haven't really decided for sure if this works. If this doesn't work, if I can't tighten it down enough to make it fit, or if there's some other reason why it's not working, well, then maybe we'll just pass on it until I can get some oilcloth. But this has got to sound really weird in this microphone, because the microphone's right here next to where I'm doing this. So if it does, I'm sorry. Okay. But I'm getting around the bend. Whew. Well, I did put in some buttonholes, like I said, where the elastic is coming out, and they're actually holding up pretty well. I'm pretty pleased with that. For some reason, I couldn't find the manual for this machine, and I have never made buttonholes on this machine before. And so I did a little tester piece, with just some regular old scrap fabric. And it did not go well. At all. The little computer screen on my machine wanted me to do something, but it wasn't really clear what. So I just set a really small stitch length and stitch width, and I just winged it. I do that a lot. If this is your first time here or the first time watching this, you're going to see me winging a lot of stuff. Partially because I don't have tons of time. I'm not going to undo a lot of things unless I really have to. So we're going to make it work, whether it wants to or not. Yeah, there's a lot of seat of the pants driving here. But I've done enough stuff over enough years that pretty much I still get to the destination. And I guess that's really all that matters, whether you're driving by the seat of your pants or with a road map. Did you get there? Did you get there in one piece? Or at least the same number of pieces you started with. My son used to pick on me about that. He goes, well, what if you had 12 pieces? I'm like, fine. Of course, he's 26 now, so it's not as much of a giggle for him, but he used to think that was the funniest thing ever. Just to find ways to exasperate his mother. And of course, I wasn't really as exasperated as he thought I was. Because, you gotta play it up a little bit, right? Those of you with grandkids, I'm sure that you play it up quite a bit when you're dealing with them. Alright. Well, this is definitely making some interesting shapes. This is the weirdest thing. Right now it looks almost like a toilet seat cover where part of it blew out. My mother used to have those. I never understood. But, that was her thing. Now, another problem with this vinyl and its soft interior is that the next piece of elastic is going to be almost as hard to put in. Because part of the reason this isn't sliding super easy is because of that soft inner layer. If it was just the oilcloth, it would do better. Excuse me. One of the nice things about this whole design is that I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be machine washable at the end. You'd be able to just chuck this in the machine with your towels and get it all nice and clean and not have to just wash it by hand or anything like that. Oh, we're getting there. There's only 8 inches left that hasn't started to ruffle up yet. But anywho, this was not a project I had really intended, but last Thursday my client was asking me about it and if I could fix her shower cap. And so, like I said, my first thought was just to replace the elastic, but then I was like, that's going to be a real pain to do. And it's like tissue paper thin. Just very carefully undoing the one that I had here, I wound up with holes in it, and I was being more careful than I usually am on some of this stuff. But no. And I don't want to mess with that. Well, my hand's getting a little tired holding onto this elastic. But we are getting closer. Alright, well, it's 7:45. So, let me tell you what I'm going to do with my backing. I've told you that I keep squares up to 12.5 inches cut out of scrap. Well, I used to keep strips that wide too. And I decided about 2 years ago, let me think, 3 years ago, it was just pre-pandemic, that I was going to not save any strips wider than 6.5. So I took a box and I put everything in it that was wider than 6.5. So like this. So 7 to 12.5. And I put it all in this one big banker box. And I said, okay, at some point I'm going to do something with that. And it just sat around. Well, this last 2 weeks, I have also been working on reorganizing my sewing space / studio. So, for example, you used to see the lights in my computer over here on my right. Now they're all the way up next to the wall because I got rid of a 4-drawer dresser that used to be in here. It was nice to have because of the storage that it had, but it was a pain to get to because of the computer and everything else. And so I almost never accessed it. And so I said, you know what? It would be better if I did something different with it so that it would actually be, that space would be more usable. So I've been reorganizing in here. And so I came across this box of wider strips. So I've done this on other quilts, so this is nothing new. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take strips that are the same width, and it doesn't matter what width they are, and I'm going to sew them into long columns. And then what I'm going to do is sew the columns together until I reach the length that I need. So I'm going to need it to be 56 inches wide by 80 tall in order to have the extra space needed for the quilting. So that's going to be it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then that way I'm using up all of these fabrics that I just have lying around right now in a way that is very useful. And it won't take very long, really, to do it at all. Now, if I wanted to, I could sew them into a giant square, basically, and make a giant 4-patch and then cut it twisted. So, you know, if you want to have fun with it and have a giant twisted 4-patch on the back, you could do that, too. I have done half-square triangles and all kinds of other stuff with strips and things like that on the backs of some of my quilts. But I'm not thinking about that for this one as much. Alright, how much more do I have to go? Actually, it's not that far off. Okay, so at this point, I'm getting tired, so I'm going to pull it from the other side because that's the last little bit here that needs to get done. And then I'm going to tie a bow. And this is going to need some adjustment, right? So let's be honest. But I now have a new shower cap. And this will take a little bit of playing with the gathers, but let's see how it is. Now, obviously, I don't have my hair up, but that will certainly more than do the job. I am going to obviously have to cut this. And yes, this would be so much better in oilcloth. So if you decide that you want to play along with me and give this a little shot, get yourself some oilcloth. It was all so ugly today. And since I wanted to do this to show the client and ask her if this is what she had in mind, I didn't really want to wait that long. The only thing left to do is to cut my last little strings here. There we go. And my elastic. And I still have all this left, which is more than enough for another one of these. So all I'd have to do is just stitch it onto the end here and then pull it through. Obviously I'm going to have the same fight I did this time because of the material, but with an oilcloth it would be a lot thinner. It won't have the fuzzy backing on it, so it should just slide through like a dream. So here we go. One shower cap ready for use. So there we go. Now, if you have a ton of hair, then you can always up your dimensions. Like I said, I did a 24-inch circle with 22 inches on the inside and then a ½ inch out from there. But you could go like 26 and 24, so if you have a lot of hair that you want to put up underneath the cap, you certainly could. If you do not wear the slick side in, you could also line it with something like a cotton or something like that. One thing you might want to consider is going ahead and doing that anyway, and then if you decide to do some sort of a spa treatment on your hair, you could just wear it inside out. So I just know that I'll never use the cotton side on the inside, so for me that's not really worth it. But we have our finished project for the day. So next step is going to be to start to work on the Twisted 4 patch. Oh, let me go back to hexes for just a second here. Judy will have seen these, but I don't think any of the rest of you have. You've been watching me do this hexagon quilt. Well, I was also making a quilt using these hexagons. And so these are about 1/4 of an inch. It's less than that on the side. Let me see here. Yeah, it's 5 millimeters on a side. So that's going to be, it's about a 1/4 of an inch. So I was going to make a hanging about 48 inches square using a bunch of these. Now, these ones are different. These ones are plastic. Okay? And so, well, I strung them together, but they're plastic with a hole in the middle. I don't know. Hold on. Let me see. I don't think you're going to be able to see them. I'll try to get the camera going for next time. But since they're thicker than the paper, you can't really do the flat back method that I'm doing on these. You have to fold it over and do a whip stitch. So that's what's in these. They're also so small you can't do the regular basting. What I wound up doing was just taking my fabric and folding it around and then whipping these two together and then the next two together and then the final three together. So I wound up with this giant set of loops on the back, but that held it nice and tight so that I was able to then stitch them together. And then in order to get out of it, you just snip it and then you're done. But I do not believe that I'm going to continue doing that. So what does one do with a flower and one leaf? Well, our guild is having a make a new name tag summer challenge. There you go. So I'm going to put this, I'm just going to applique it down onto my name tag. So this is another project that I have just made the decision is not worth finishing right now. This thing over here is going to take me eons to finish. And there's 2 more in the queue. Because I want to use up all my old hexes, and then I also kind of went on a hex making binge. So I'm going to be doing a lot of handwork with those. And so I think that I'm going to let these hexes go and let this project finish, but this way I'll kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because I will go ahead and make good use out of these, out of this flower and leaf, and at the same time get my name tag done for September. So that's my plan with that. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to see what I can do about this camera. Not really sure how that's going to work, but I'm going to try. And then I'm going to continue stitching on this. And so next time you'll notice that almost all of these are off the wall. And then you'll be watching them pop back up starting at the top, and I'll be working my way down as my triads are complete. I will warn you, if you're doing this, the edges, the half hexes, and the thirds are the hardest ones to do, which is why I started at the top. I did the whole top row, because they're a little bit harder to manipulate given their size, and that there's not a lot of material there to work with, and it's hard to keep them tight, because when you tighten it up in order to get the V part done, the edge at the top, your material comes over that edge, so now you have to kind of peel it back while you're trying to stitch. So I wanted to get kind of the annoying part done first, which is why I did that whole top row. But the way I'm going to do the triads, let me just go ahead and show you that, because you can see. So these are together. Okay, so you can see this is a triad that's together. So here I have these three, this half block and these two. So I'm going to take my binder clips. I like the micro ones, okay, the 1/4 inch ones. And so I'll just pull this like this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use the binder clips to keep these oriented the way that they were, right? Just like this. All right. So I've got this pair done, and then I'll clip these two and these two. Now the oddballs with the halves or the thirds don't stack as well as the full hexes do, but then I'll just clip these down, and they'll go in a little box that I'll carry with me that I can do my sewing wherever I'm going to be. So what I will do is they're all going to go in this bin. Okay? And then I have a little box that I carry in my purse. And so I will pick out anything with a sand color, and I'll make sure I have sand threads with me, and those will be in my travel box. And then when I get everything done with sand that I can easily spot in my big bin here, then I'll pick another color. So that's how come some of these oranges are done. I was doing that with some of the oranges and some of the reds, so that I could just sit downstairs. If I had a day where I didn't want to be basting, or I hadn't figured out all my colors or whatever, and I just wasn't up to it, then I could go ahead and sew, because I would just sew any two things that were red that were part of a triad, because I did some of them in triads. But this will be a little bit more formal, because I'm going to be doing them row by row, whereas before I just kind of did 3 that all had red or 3 that all had orange. So it's going to get a little weird down here and at the very bottom where the crab is, but that's okay, because I can do those here. But again, so here I have the hexagon on the left and the right, and I'll clip those together just like that. Okay, and then this water goes in just like that, and then I'll clip these together. So how many of these do I have? When I bought them, well, I already had a whole bunch of them. I also have some that are slightly larger. These are the micros. They also make smalls. But because I'm a fan of binder clips for a ton of things, I already had a bunch of them for quilting. I actually used the smalls to put my bindings on my quilts, so I use binder clips for binding. But anyway, so I had a few hundred. I bought 1,000 more, and it's still not enough for all of the projects to do everything that I want to do. But you all know I'm kind of crazy, so that's okay. Now, one of the things that I did do on this is that this fabric here is directional, okay? And so it's supposed to be wood, but I was thinking of it as sand, because sand, when the waves go up and down, doesn't stay completely flat. It's kind of rippled, and it kind of gives that effect. So when I was going ahead and selecting these fabrics, I made sure that the sand went left to right. It didn't go up and down. Okay, so again, I'm going to just go ahead and take the next two. Now, some of the fabrics don't matter what they are. In this case, obviously it does, because we need to make sure that this wave is going to continue, right? So when I pull it down, I want to make sure that that's right. I'm also going to have my number code with me, the sheet that has all of the piece numbers on it, so that if I put things down or lose track, I'll be able to just look it up by the number to see where it goes. I am running a couple minutes late, but here, let me show you. So here's my my two triads, and then I'll stack them like this. And so they'll just keep going up and up and up really easily in my bin. Okay, so it is after time. I apologize. I always try to end on time. If you've enjoyed today, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and do all of that stuff. Otherwise, I'm here the first and third Wednesday of every month, and I hope to see you in a couple weeks. All right? Bye-bye. And now let's go sew.